Why using sleep tracking apps and gadgets is a bad idea when you have long-term insomnia and sleep problems. In today's video, I'm going to give you my very honest opinion about some of these gadgets that are out on the market at the moment, tracking sleep and giving you certain information. But this will be in relation to my work, really helping clients to overcome long-term insomnia and sleep problems. The cases are very different when you're just very curious and from a fitness perspective, rather than you really are struggling with serious sleep problems. The two different ways we look at the information is completely different, and we can't even compare those situations. So this is why in today's video, I'm really just going to focus on in relation to the work that I do with clients, and why in those circumstances using gadgets or tracking apps is just not really something I integrate into my work. But I'm not against innovation. Many of the gadgets that are out on the market, I've actually experimented with. I have used them for myself. I have looked at how they deliver information. Even when I struggled with my insomnia many years ago, we already had some of these trackers in their early stages. So even back then, I used some of them as a way of figuring out how they can help me. So it's not just coming from the client perspective, but also because I've really looked into some of these gadgets and apps that are currently promoted to help you figure out how you sleep and how you can move forward. But innovation is not a bad thing. I really do hope that over the years, all of these things start to work together to help and support people like you. If we can find a way to support more people within the same time, that's going to be a good thing for everyone, because so many people do struggle. But at this stage, one of the things I'm seeing is some of these apps and gadgets are not actually practically able to support a person to help them put the right things in place. So before we turn our attention to some of the reasons I don't recommend them in my practice, I wanted to welcome you back as part of my community. If you already are watching my videos and even part of some of the products and services that I offer. And if you're brand new, then let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Beatrix Schmidt. I'm a sleep coach, a professional speaker, and the creator of the Sleep Skills for Life program, which is very much my way of providing with all of the tools and the techniques and the practicalities so that someone like you can fully overcome their long-term insomnia and sleep problems and future-proof their sleep as well, so you don't have to struggle again. Before we start talking about gadgets, I wanted to ask you to also subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. Hit that little bell so I can let you know when I post new videos. And that's very much my way of also reaching more people. My audience has grown over the years, and it's really great to see how my way of explaining things do help people to figure out a better way forward. So let's turn back to gadgets, sleep tracking devices, apps, and so on. So one of the first things I see in my practice, and this often is part of my very initial conversation with clients, is that the data that a client receives doesn't seem to match their experience. So what do I mean by that? Often when a client books a sleep assessment appointment to speak to me about their sleep problems, they also send through the data from their sleep tracking app or device. So even before I speak to a person, I might already have their information, their data, because they freely share it with me. But once I speak to someone, what is becoming more and more obvious, and I've had quite a number of conversations more and more recently where the person had the data from their gadget as well as our conversation together, is that there's a big mismatch between what the data is showing and what the person is experiencing. So as an example, if you are using a tracking app or device and it's giving you the report every morning, one of the first things I see is that how the client feels in the morning at the time when they check their data is different. So often clients will tell me that, they check their information, let's say the day before our appointment, and what the data was showing doesn't seem to be true. Now, naturally, data is not untrue, but what we have to take into account with long-term insomnia and sleep problems is that there is a perception part from our mind in that situation. Just because the app says one thing, it doesn't mean that it feels that way for us. So if the app said that you had X amount of this deep sleep or X amount of light sleep or maybe X amount of hours, but you actually feel quite decent about the sleep you had at night, or you feel fairly recharged even if you didn't have a lot of hours of sleep, then what seems to happen with clients is start to actually disconnect from the data. They start to get frustrated about it. They start to get sort of unsure about it, why one thing is feeling one way and the data is showing something else. And this is one of the literally the first thing I discuss with clients. We have to remember that our mind's job is to conceptualize everything we experience. So when you become awake and fully conscious in the morning, your mind is going to put things into perspective. The app naturally cannot do that for you because it is more a scientifically driven data. The perception is something that you are as a human being able to really conclude. You know how you feel, you know how recharged you might feel, you know how disturbed or not disturbed the night was. So this is where I would say to a client that um, we don't have to believe everything the data suggests. We don't have to ignore it either, but building practical self-awareness and understanding what you feel and how your mind perceives something is more important than just the data aspect. I have recorded a video about the 5 sleep stages. In that video, I explained these different stages of sleep and how they might show up for you. But naturally, as your sleep deepens, your level of awareness changes. So just because the data says to you that you have had a certain amount of deep sleep or certain amount of light sleep, it doesn't mean that you remember it that way. So sometimes what happens when you wake up in the morning and you check your data and it's mismatched is what the data said is not what you actually remember from the nighttime. So that's where this mismatch is often really confusing. So clients will say to me, well, app says this, but I feel this way and I'm not sure which one to believe. Always obviously look at the combination of the two. Data itself is not going to give you the perception of the mind and how it feels. So that's the first thing. The second thing the second reason I actually say to clients not to use tracking apps, especially with long-term insomnia and sleep problems, is because at that stage, after about 3 months of struggling or longer than 3 months of struggling, the complexity of the problem will be physically, emotionally, and mentally complex. It's not just about the physicality of your sleep or the hours of sleep you had or the amount of deep sleep, light sleep you have had or the number of wakings you have had. Those are all the physical data-based information. But it's also about feelings, emotions, frustrations, disappointment. It's also about how your mind is. Do you have racing mind in the middle of the night? Is your mind busy? When you look at your data in the morning, how does it make you feel? How do you think about it? So when we have just pure scientific data from, let's say, an app, we're only seeing hindsight information that is some part physical. but we're not looking at how you feel. Did you feel relaxed? Did you feel wired? Did you feel like you were really fidgety and not really restful at night? That's the second part. Complex and long-term insomnia and sleep problems bring all the three layers: the physicalities, the emotions, and the mentalities. And if you don't work with those three things, just receiving data and information isn't going to mean that you're in the best position to put in place what you need. And so this is again one of these other things that I talk to clients about, is if the data and the service you're paying for is not providing you with personalized and practical recommendations of how to move forward that actually work for you, then the mismatch is already there. Data doesn't always lead to doing what it takes to overcome the problems. And the longer term the insomnia and sleep problems have been around, the more complex they become. The mindsets, the behaviors, the autopilot responses, triggers, the way you relax or can't relax is going to be very different based on your personal circumstances. But the data might not capture all that information that is necessary for you to be able to practically move forward. And the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about, and that's again one of the reasons I say to clients to not use these tracking devices whilst they work with me, is that I actually teach people to become self-aware of what is preventing them to be able to sleep very well at night. So fall asleep in 10-15 minutes, sleep through the night without disturbances, wake up refreshed, naturally wake up so that they have enough energy throughout the day. If you don't have the practical understanding of how to create that, and you don't have the self-awareness to understand what is helping, what is preventing you to be able to create that, then the data itself isn't really going to lead you to be able to do what it takes to fully overcome the challenges that you have with your sleep. And again, that's the simplest way to describe it. Now, the other thing I always do with clients who are curious about scientific information is I teach them how to keep a sleep diary, which is a non-electronic way. So we're really using the perception of the mind. We're really using the practicalities of what's showing up. We're really using what's helping and what's hindering the person. Later on, when their sleep has actually really improved, I normally get them to put the gadgets or the trackers back on if they want to. Because what I want to show them is the difference between the two approaches. So when often clients, let's say 3 months later, when they have really overcame their sleep problems, they put the gadgets or the sleep tracking apps back on and they measure their sleep, they actually can tell the difference between the practicality and the data. So they might have negative data or sort of warnings about, oh, maybe you didn't sleep so well, or you didn't have as much REM sleep as you should, and so on from the data. But they actually know that they have slept well. They know how they feel. They know they have lots of energy. And that's a really good way to show people what I mean by how you want to work with these new innovations, but in a practical way. Don't always believe every single thing that you are presented with, because it just really depends on how that gadget or that tracking app has been designed. Then the final thing I wanted to add here is if you do end up using some of these tracking apps or devices, then look at more of the practical information. So more and more recently, again, what I get from clients is over a 90-day period, this is the tendencies the app is showing or the gadget is showing. The challenge with combined information is that you don't see the positives and the negatives and how the dynamics play out in different ways. So, for example, if you just look at a 30-day period versus a 90-day period, the tendencies and the averages are going to be represented more appropriately to closest to where you are at. Sleep evolves over time. So if you look at a very wide range of data, it is going to be averaged in a very different way than if you look at a more current practical data. Let's say either a 14-day period, a 7-day period, or maximum a 30-day period. So how I teach people to be practical about things is we look at 7-day periods. Within 7 days, what are the tendencies you're seeing? Do you see certain lifestyle changes, let's say weekend versus weekday? Now, if you compound that information over 30 days, the data from the app or gadget might not be giving you some of those clues that will give you the answers you need in order to move forward in a different way. So this is the last piece I wanted to sort of explain to you, because as I work with clients more and more with more complex sleep problems and insomnia problems, what I have seen is gadgets have actually often increased frustration, increased nervousness, increased anxiousness, instead of practically helping the person to be curious and to be able to put the right things in place to help themselves. So these were my reasons why I don't recommend any particular gadgets, and I don't actually use them practically in my practice to really help people overcome their long-term insomnia and sleep problems. But as I started this video, I am not against innovation, but we've got to look at whether or not it is really sorting the problem out, or it's actually putting something in place that we don't want. More nervousness, more anxiousness, more overanalyzing thinking. So thank you so much for watching today's video. I'm not going to say you're going to agree everything that I said in today's video, but I really do hope that you start to understand some of these practicalities that are different when you are looking at self-awareness and capturing information that way versus looking at just a tag-based data capturing. Now, if you have liked today's video, then I would love you to really hit that like button below. Hit that little bell as well and subscribe so I can let you know when I post new videos. And other than that, I will continue sharing some of these things with you so you're in the best position to really start moving forward in a different way and start overcoming your long-term insomnia and sleep problems as well. So thank you so much for watching.